Hi everyone, welcome back to Normal Nomad and welcome to day 2 of Vlogmas. So Vlogmas for me today is just going to be doing my November wrap up, and as you're all aware, given my past TBR, I did participate in non-fiction November and I think I had a pretty good year. There was 4 prompts, of which I read 3 of the books and I'm halfway through the 4th one. So I think that's a pretty good effort. I think one year I didn't do as well. I think I only read like 2 non-fiction books, but I still think that's a pretty good effort. The one that I'm finishing off it's a really one that's taking up a lot of my concentration, so it's not one I can just sink into, but I'm loving it. So let's get straight into it now. I started off November with the fantastic A History of the World in 21 Women by Jenny Murray. Now I have read Jenny Murray's History of the World in History of Britain, in 21 Women, and I thoroughly enjoyed that, but I liked seeing how this encompassed quite a large range of different women from different backgrounds, different stories, different representations, and it really gave you an insight. And I think the fact that Jenny Murray has interviewed a lot of the later women on part of BBC's Radio British Women's Hour, I think it's called, it was just absolutely fascinating to hear her personal experiences meeting some of these absolutely amazing women. This one I've recommended for all Christmas gifts if you know someone who likes their history or at least loves to know about some really powerful women who are currently still alive and still doing amazing things. I really recommend this for Christmas. The paperback has just come out, so it's a lot cheaper and it still has a pretty cover as well. So thoroughly enjoyed this book. I might as well hold these up all in one go because I read the trilogy one after the other, and that was The Bear and the Nightingale, Girl in the Tower, and Winter of the Witch. Not only do I have the really pretty UK covers, which are gorgeous, but all 3 are done by Catherine Arden. This one's just come out this year, so thank goodness I read the trilogy all together because I would not have been able to wait. Absolutely stunning fantasy set in medieval Russia, so it's got a really interesting setting, but it's got some fairy or fae world elements, and it uses the spiritual side of, or the folklore, Russian folklore, quite well, and it just works so brilliantly. It's just one of those series, and I read this for Sci-Fi Fantasy Feminist Book Club, and everyone loved it. It was such a fantastic series. I can't help but love it. If you love Naomi Novik's Uprooted or Spinning Silver, if you love Kate Forsyth's retellings, it's in a similar vein. It does have fantasy elements, but it is just a beautiful retelling. The main character is so outrageously good, and her character development in this series is stunning, so I absolutely recommend. So you can probably tell this month has been fairly fantastic for me so far, and that was the first 4 reads. Next I picked up This Was Our Pat by Ryan Andrews. This is about some young boys who they live in a village that send these lanterns down, part of an old folklore, down the river every year when the moon is at its peak during summer, and so they decide to all follow the lanterns along, and whoever turns back or looks back or decides to go back is out of the group. But of course the oddball of the village, he kind of follows along too, and the main character, he was always friends with him until it wasn't really seen as cool, but he always has doubts and he feels bad about leaving the guy who used to be his friend behind. But it ends up that he and the oddball the last ones left, and they decide to go on this big adventure, and it's really quite sweet because it's about all these challenges that face them and main thing overcoming is selfishness and social pressures, which was really beautiful, and the illustrations are lovely. It's like really tonal throughout all the book, mainly blues, but the use of colour is stunning, and I really thoroughly recommend. It wasn't the most satisfying ending, but it was perfect for the story itself. Next was a solid recommendation from a lady I work with at the bookstore, and that was The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackey. Now he actually does these illustrations on Instagram, and they were so popular that people said you should just make a book. And so what he's done, he does these beautiful ink drawings, but they're filled with like these beautiful little affirmations. It's almost like Winnie the Pooh-esque, or a bit of Wind in the Willows fun, and each little character has their own query or quest in life and a different quirk and personality, and one might be always comforting and there, the other one's quite reserved but always there to help people, and the other might be silly and jovial but quite scared at times and always need that reassurance. So it's just this beautiful group of creatures just moving into the world, and some of the sayings and quotes are just stunning. They just make you feel good. So this is also one I recommend for Christmas. I think it just won in the UK, like Waterstone's bookstore. It just won like Book of the Year, and it's well deserved because it's just one of those books that you can have tucked away on a coffee table in your bookshelf, and you'll just be able to flick to it and find something that just really speaks to you in that time. And I really love it, and it's really, really sweet and beautiful, and I definitely recommend. Alright, so next was my second non-fiction November read, and that was Be the Change by Gina Martin. This is a toolkit for activists, or at least getting into activism, and this was fantastic. I was a bit skeptical when it said toolkit. I'm like, yeah, sure, it's just going to be about her own activism, which would have been fascinating anyway, but it really isn't. It's about what she had to do, because she's like, she doesn't have this amazing degree in political science and, you know, social change and things like that. So it was just showing what, if you're passionate about something, things that you can do and what processes you will have to do and challenges you might face to try and bring about change and meaningful change. So it was a really amazing read. I cannot recommend this more if you want to at least do something better, or to support your local community, and just to do things that are really helpful to your local community or even the wider community. It just gives you so much inspiration and so much courage that you can do these things. Even though you're one person, you still can make a difference just doing that small change to help. It can be really, really encouraging and inspiring. So I definitely recommend, if you want to have a really good read about what you can tune your passions into and how you can really captivate people in your local community. So the last non-fiction November book I managed to get off my shelf. I read it in 3 days. I knew I would read it fast because I was so darn excited to read it, and that is A Woman of No Importance, World War II's Most Dangerous Spy. And that is Virginia Hall. It was written by Sonia Purnell, and it's the story of Virginia Hall, and what she did throughout her life was amazing. She always wanted to get into the diplomatic corps within the embassy. She learned 5 languages. She studied in Paris. She worked in an embassy in Turkey where she lost her leg. So then she became a person with a disability, who then went on to become one of the most successful resistance coordinators of the Second World War. She worked for SOE, which was originally a British intelligence gathering and more like a chaos making group, but also she did amazing things, and just the community that she was able to start up and the constant pitfalls she faced, because they would always put these unexperienced or highly egotistical men in charge of her area when she had a better hold on it than they did, and they kept demanding money and spending it on themselves when she was actually working the unit and working the game. So there are moments of sheer frustration of what she had to face, but also there is trying to understand who she was. She was a very private person, and she never wanted to talk about her time over in France, because I think it was something that was quite personal, and she felt quite strongly. But yeah, it was so stunning. But yeah, she was an amazing woman, and it's such a brilliant read. You can get through it really fast. Another great recommendation for Christmas if you are looking for someone who loves to read about spies, who loves to read about history, who loves to read about women in history, who loves to read about all the ways that things could have been better for women in the service. Yes, buy this book. And also it's about a woman with a disability who made sure that she was never seen for her disability, that didn't define who she was. So absolutely stunning read. And lastly, I quickly snuck this one in because I was so excited for Cloak and Dagger Christmas, especially after I did my TBR. This was one of the satellite reads I was going to read, and I read it straight away. I read it in 2 days. It was so much fun. It was set in the 1930s, and it's just such a cute. It's like Hazel Wong and Daisy Wells. Daisy is like the perfect English miss at boarding school, and Hazel Wong is actually from Hong Kong. And so they quick become friends because they realise that both of them are hiding who they truly are just to fit in. But they're both quite clever girls, and so they decide to start up the detective agency. Of course, Daisy marks herself as president and Hazel as the secretary, but they quickly become president and vice president together after they solve the murder of one of the mistresses at their school, which was quite shocking that it happened. But they're about 13, so it's probably a bit of towards the older teen, but it's still a fabulously well written, well paced, and well executed murder mystery. I highly recommend. So basically my theme for this video was I highly recommend, because I had an absolutely wonderful November. Let me know what your favourite read was for November down in the comments below, and I'll see you all tomorrow for Vlogmas Day 3. Bye!